excellence and innovation in design, followed by thorough detailing and vigilant construction supervision. This approach to design and execution is independent of the scale of the task. Its philosophy and approach to architecture is a progressive one. Tariq Hassan fits very well into the category of contemporary architects with a mind to explore and execute challenges. Every decision that comes out is after much self-criticism and enhancement. To him, the act of architecture is a depth study of the client, an assessment of his psychological preferences, emphasizing the start of a journey. Tariq Hassan, as an architect, makes constant everybody architect Tariq Hassan.
First of all, I'd like to say that this is just going to be a kind of all about how we went about the competition, winning it, and then through the execution. So let me tell you, I think the hardest part was getting it built. Design was not so difficult. I mean, obviously is when you go through a competition, there's always this anguish. But the greatest difficulties that we have ever come across is getting something built for the government. There are some team members here, Hani is here, he knows what a difficult time we had. The construction of this was incredibly difficult, and we still are suffering. So I don't know if I'm ever going to do a government project as a competition. But let me say why we went into doing a project for what we thought would be a government building. Most of the buildings that the government ends up building are designed by A&E firms, architectural engineering firms that has one or two architects on board, and the rest of them are engineers. Now we thought we'd like to break that cycle and do something that is relevant. So to do something relevant is the process that we went through. So I shall begin with between shadow and light. We all know and have read between silence and light. But this is what we thought was important. Islamabad High Court. So the competition team was there, of which I think only Hani is here. Javed is, all right, hi. The design team, of course, was fairly significant. The construction team in Islamabad was there. So we all struggle with identity. What should we do when we're dealing with something of that scale? So, of course, it's all about people, their history, the culture, and the land. So, some of the earliest sketches, and I thought I'd put them up because they're relevant. So, very early on, we thought shadow and light. In other words, we are in darkness and hopefully there will be light with justice. That was a long time ago. Some of the initial thoughts, so the idea of a court for people, the idea of a court for judges, as we said, a court of light. Now, how do you translate some of those ideas? It's relatively easy to come up with ideas, but to translate them into physical form becomes a little more difficult. Very quickly, you can see that we were looking at some kind of columns that held up a big roof, and a building that had two parts, and one end that was open, the other end that was closed, creating a courtyard in between. From there, very quickly, we went into something that was an open end, a closed end, and two sides. Okay, and we also thought about things like light towers, umbrellas, gardens for people, and water, something as a peaceful course of water. So that's part of that sketch. And what I'm going to just show is some sequential sketching that we went and did. Next. Can we? Yes, me out. So the idea of light really comes about when there was darkness. And once there is darkness, it's only then the light is important. The light starts to change. And you can see that we were thinking of courtyards within courtyards within courtyards, water, and so we thought about a people's court. And columns that held up of light, that held up this umbrella. And we thought about the fact that what should a court building be? Those were questions that we kept asking ourselves when we were doing this competition. So the idea was not to copy the colonial buildings, which most of the high courts are, not to copy some imagery from elsewhere, especially the Middle East or the West. So we looked at what should it be. And Islamabad High Court actually is the court for almost the whole country, because what happens is all federal cases end up there. All our corporations are headquartered there, so they have to be dealt with there. So the idea was it's one of the biggest courts, and nowadays all you hear about is Islamabad High Court, what it's doing or what it's not doing. So we looked at the idea of the typologies that would fit. So a courtyard as my friend Najib would agree with, is one of the most basic things for our environment. It's a controlled environment. The veranda, because it mitigates between the courtyard and the rest of the spaces. We felt something that does show a connection to our past, and we thought the dome and some towers which we thought would be something that we thought will bring us some interventions within this large building. So of course we all know, all architects, we know what a courtyard does. We wanted to save the existing trees. There were a lot of existing trees. We wanted to save them. Unfortunately, in the day of the inauguration, the PWD wiped them all out.
It is.
So the foundation laying took care of one of the major design elements that we had worked around. And of course the veranda. The veranda, we said, should be in scale of the fact that it is for the whole country. And it should be for the people and not for the judges. It's a kind of a forum. So it faces the Constitution Avenue. The intent was to actually make something that would be in keeping with the Constitutional Avenue and a complete opposite of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court diagonally across the street is a closed building, and we wanted something that was open, transparent. Of course, one of the typologies is screens, and of course in this country we use them for privacy, for heat mitigation. So we designed a dome where we thought that we could be able to take the people up onto the roof and look down at the proceedings of the main court. Unfortunately, security is such a concern, they never wanted anybody to get up onto the roof. So that's something we learned.
And very true.
So the towers we created were to actually invoke the idea of hope. Hope that we will bring light among the foliage of Islamabad. So that was one of the later sketches. So that's what it was. So light is the expression of justice. Where does that come from? Okay. So there is a saying that says the just will be seated on chairs of light. We found that, and I think it was Kareem who found that, and we used that. And of course, foliage, Islamabad is a lot of foliage, so we used the foliage to create some of the screens. We created some water courses, which again we lost in the process. So I want to tell you how we also lose things. So the building has to have much more than, so it has to be able to lose things about it and still be able to come out as a good building. So the Diwani arm was a thought, okay, the bar of course, and the idea of an enclosed garden. So the idea was that everybody comes together under the umbrella of justice. An enclosed garden to bring everybody together as a community. So these were just thoughts that we were putting together. So it's on Main Constitution Avenue. Okay. So that's Main Constitution Avenue, right next to the Pakistan Broadcasting House. Very modernist building. And so it ended up being the U that we started off with, and we enclosed it in the back. So very simple.
Yeah, that's it.
So the trees that were on site we try to make the building incorporate those, which of course they cut off. Very simple idea of circulation around the courtyard, simple zoning, in other words, live by technology. So the courts on one side, the public on the other. So served versus servant. As we went through the process, and you can start seeing some round elements that are coming initially up front, and experimenting with the door in section. We also thought at times that it could come down on the people. And then we thought about putting an end to the end of the courtyard, a constitution screen that would be carved out of stone. Unfortunately, that constitution screen was also nixed by the Chief Justice himself of the High Court. He said, you don't need it. And all we were doing is putting the preamble of the court. And I remember spending many hours trying to get that screen proportionately looking right. So all the elements coming together. So the umbrella, the veranda, the courtyard, the constitution screen, the light towers, the dome now oval, the columns of light, and the main idea of people being on the Constitution Avenue rather than being put in the back. So the judges are in the back and the people up front. So we've already talked about these, so I'll just quickly go through the fact that these were how we presented the project. The idea of the main court or the Chief Justice's court, you know, with light streaming in onto the judges. There is, of course, some thinking about the pantheon. Are they gods or not? So the and how it was actually developed all around the courtyard. Now these towers of light actually have dual fans in them. So in the day they exhaust the hot air. So they bring in light deep into the building as well as exhaust the air. So those are the courtyards right here, which are within the building, and they become towers. And those are open-ended courtyards facing the street, the main court, with the veranda basically as a see-through space in the Constitution wall being right here. So the judge's entry is set to the side. So you can look in the basement and see we had left that whole area of where the trees were. The oval becomes more exaggerated as you go up. It starts to influence the stairs for the judges. It starts to influence other parts, and at the end it rises up and becomes the dome. The angled cutout is the prayer space, and the only thing that is in that direction. So that was the elevation at times, but again we lost the auditorium. We lost 8 courtrooms because we had to bring the project into what the then Ehsan Iqbal, being the chief of the planning division, said that this is all you can do. So you have to be able to navigate those kind of things also, which is, I think, some of the hardest parts of being an architect is to dealing with these bureaucrats. So you can see the sketch and the perspective is still similar. The light filtering through was supposed to filter through Constitution or the preamble of the Constitution. So the litigants and the judges were set to pass this and be bathed in the light of the Constitution. That didn't happen because the judge said he doesn't want that. And we went through a lot of difficulty to try and do that. The other thing we lost, because we created this large dome, and that was the reason, was because it was a step courtroom, like the courtrooms in Karachi also. That was also said, the judges said, no, we don't want anybody looking at us at eye level. Everybody has to look up at us. So just the elements, the screens, the light towers, the dome, etc. You all know what the story goes. So when we were developing how to do these light columns or columns of light, we went through these permutations and we ended up just very simple straight columns that would actually hold up that roof, but they would be filigree. In other words, the light would come through, and we wanted them very simple and very modern. Unfortunately, we were told that it's not Islamic enough, and one of the judges said that he had a dream that it should be these great arches, and literally forced us to create these arches. So we then said, all right, we will take cues from our earlier Diwan-e-Aam and try and do a little bit of a mannerist approach to it. That is the earlier version. That's also the earlier versions where the columns are all straight.
Yeah, it's nice.
That's what it ended up being, and that's how we presented it to them. So what all did we lose? I'm going to go around and show you. Construction documents. A complex building like this, having all the consultants on board, or however good they are issues that happen. And sometimes we miss these. So having a team that reviews drawings after they come out is very important too, and I think most of us should learn from that. So red lines are important. How to build, even how to place writing. So that is how we had thought the Constitution wall would be. Unfortunately, you will see it doesn't exist. So the screens were meant to mitigate in front of all the windows. So that's how it looks now. You can see that the towers are still there, but the difference between one block and the other block is much less. I think there's a little bit of a problem in this photograph because it's not that tall. But the face that faces the Radio Pakistan is fairly blank, and every other the windows that are large scaled are screened. Now we had thought we'd do wash terrazzo, which is a lot cheaper option. One day one of the committee, the judges committee came, and the contractor had put up terrible wash terrazzo samples and really a lot of white marble samples, and the intent was to make it into white marble because that was something that was not part of the original BOQ. So that was a new extra item. And my God, that contractor convinced all those judges, of course with a great deal of help from PWD, against all our resistance, to do white marble. Why? Because the Supreme Court on the other side is white marble. So we had to create ways where it didn't look like this same scale thing going on. So the other side, which is the judge's side, is more transparent because it faces a 5-acre plot of their own. So the stair towers are expressed and the courtyards are expressed. And I need Irfan to go and take some decent photographs. These are all photographs from mobile. So this is the entry to the judge's side. This is the entry, the public entry. So we made sure that the gates also were transparent, so you could see in. This is something we were able to win because they just wanted solid block gates that nothing could be seen inside. So the scale of all these photographs is off. Is there any way we can go back to the original thing? Because everything looks much more vertical. So the fountain that was here disappeared. The auditorium that was here disappeared. Yes, thank you. So I'm going to go backwards. So the scale is very different. And these columns actually, they change, their pattern changes as they go up. And the lobby as a bridge between the two wings. The courtyard with its screen courts and the stair, ceremonial stair, is still there. So this is where we were supposed to have the constitutional preamble, and that is where we were supposed to be able to walk up and look down through these periscope things that we had designed. So on a wet day, so that's the only part that is left with the trees, looking across through the veranda. So the idea is that it is very transparent. The entry to the court is very transparent. From the ceremonial stair, so this is where we go up into the, the Chief Justice's court. How the screens look from inside, the rather large corridors, so and of course seating on each side. The interior of course has where the judges intent on keeping it very traditional, but we were still able to get the light into the court. So I think I shared what we were able to do and what we were not able to do. What we were not able to do is keep a lot of the important add-on things that were there, but we were still able to keep the main thrust of the building. Why? Because I think most of us have not, I know Shahid probably has a lot of experience on that, but or even Ijaz, but most of us do not have experience dealing with the system, the bureaucracy. It is very, very difficult. So I will share a story. Some of us, I've probably told you guys that before. We had specified 3 specific kinds of generator companies, and the generators were meant to be bought from those particular companies. Before we knew it, advances had been given to somebody who wasn't on the list, and we said, you can't do that. And they said, well, we've already done it. In those days the judges did listen to us, so about 3 or 4 months later that money was brought back, and generators from those specific companies were bought. Now these were huge generators, and there was a lot of money, and there was a lot of kickback that was involved. And the people who lost out were the ones who were passing all the bills and our bills. And they said, boy, we will show you. And till now, they are still getting their revenge. So what did we learn from that? So we learned to be of the terrain, to be of the mountain. You know, if you're on a hill, be part of the hill. To build lightly, to build small, and not to build everywhere. To be bold, to build with bravery, to be humble. to build through the ages, for the ages, to build with the environment, to build with local materials, to build forever, build quietly, build to respond to the land, the landscape, build for people, most of all. Build for people, build with human scale, and to be brave. That's it, folks. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Tariq Saab. Thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. Now you can have a seat. Now I would like to open the floor for questions, if any, for Tariq Saab to answer.
Tariq, you mentioned about our office and Ijaz's office, that we should know how to deal with the bureaucracy. No, we don't. At least I don't. What we do is we actually refuse such work. We don't take it on. Because I would like to ask you, if they came again to you, would you take it on, another job?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's what happens. So, government projects are not very easy to do, and I think they did require a mess packer who just followed what they wanted. Mostly, I would say that there is no challenge in their work. So, आपने जो इतनी मेहनत की है, and then I don't think you achieve more than 60–70% of what you really wanted it to become, because once you are working on this building, these buildings are meant to last. They are not कि चलो 5 साल बाद 10 साल बाद इसको कुछ कर देंगे. They're going to be there, good or bad, and people are going to face it. और फिर आगे जाके वो आपको मालूम होगा, अरे यार ये तो कैसी बिल्डिंग बना दी इन्होंने. Because that Mr. Judge will not be there, and I was about to say why didn't you take them to court, but I don't think that would happen. Anyway, the wash terrazzo that you were talking about, there are 2 buildings out there, large buildings where we did wash terrazzo, and I wish these guys would have gone to see it. Every contractor cannot do it, तो उनको थोड़ा सिखाना पड़ता है. But I think wash terrazzo is something that a lot of us should be using, because it's a permanent finish. So your suggestion was absolutely right. The marble जो आपने दिखाया, is that local marble? Yes, I'm very happy with that.
So I get that. I happen to be the junior of your project. और आपको याद?
I remember that.
Yeah, I had some kind of impression that whatever you will be going through. This Chief Justice came to me and he told me कि जो दरवाज़ा, मुझे बशारत हुई है कि जो दरवाज़ा होगा वो मस्जिद नबवी का होना चाहिए. अच्छा, I told you when you met me at I told him कि देखिए जी, this language doesn't go at all with that मस्जिद नबवी का दरवाज़ा, and आपके पास आर्किटेक्ट साहब आएंगे, आप उनसे बात कर लीजिए. But Tariq didn't recognize this building at all. Whatever you presented at the jury and whatever the end product is. I'm sorry, but
if there is a lawyer in here, sometimes judges, they just dictate, and majority of the building, I think, I would disagree, I think about 75% of the building is there. A lot of the things were just wiped out because even before we got there. For example, the foundation laying, when we got to the foundation laying, I didn't recognize the site because there were no trees, and they actually wanted the foundation laying right there, and they wiped out every tree on site. So yes, the A&E firms can deal with that, yes, the NESPACs can deal with that, but are we going to leave all our important buildings that people use a great deal to what do you call it, the A&E firms? I don't think so. I think we should be brave. I think it takes bravery to be able to take these people on, and even what we have was with a great deal of effort and fighting, and for the last 2 years the contractor didn't even listen to us because he was so entrenched with PWD, and they were already upset with us because we wouldn't let them steal, plunder the project that they used to be doing. So maybe the younger generation will learn how to be able to deal with these people after our experiences.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. This was an excellent presentation. I just had 2 questions, and I think it might be beneficial for the young population in the room. The first one, you very clearly said that you had an issue with the bureaucracy of dealing with bureaucrats. I would like to ask you, what was your biggest learning there? And then my second question for you is that how do you feel that you've evolved based on this exercise? Thank you.
Things what I mentioned. So we learned those to how to look forward and what it will take, how a building can do certain things and still be able to survive. That's one. As far as every step with the bureaucrats was difficult and a learning curve, because when you come in the way of people who are about to eat the project, and you don't allow them, or at least you restrict them, they come after you, and they did that a lot. So I want to tell you how much money is still owed to us. I wish I could even get half of it back. So yes.
Tariq, I think the one thing you learned from it was bravery, of course, because it shows. Because one of your earlier slides, you said we're building because of Constitution Avenue. I think you're building for constitutional crisis. And let me tell you, in my earlier years, I've had some experience with government bureaucracies, not so much as you have had, because the way to do a project in this country, the only way to do it the way you want it is you just got to do it from the top. Somebody just dictates it. So what you have done, I believe in 50 years that I've been practicing here, is you have achieved within the system what could be best achieved. That's what you should be happy about. The remaining 25% we need to work on. I think that's very important, because you have to have a system where you are allowed to work, no matter what it is. You can have a budget, you can do all that. Hello? Is it? Yeah. So I think you will do better next time, if you ever do a government project. I don't do government projects anymore.
Once it will be a
But you know, our office has done things like the State Bank, which, you know, they never interfered with work. Why? Because the top man just said, this architect will do it, and that was it. And they actually told me that they will do the most expensive and correct detailing. And somebody said, but it cost a lot. So they told the person, one of the board of directors, said, oh, don't worry, we print the money. You know? So State Bank works a little differently. Yeah, it has been known to happen. So I think within the constraints of what you have probably come out. You know, I wouldn't know how much of a winner, but I think that's probably is about the best you could have done. What it says is that the system here says बादशाह सलामत ने अगर कहा है तो दूसरा कोई कुछ नहीं बोलेगा. आपके पास कितने गॉड से वहाँ जजेस जो थे, कितने सारे थे. So that is part of the system. You know, somebody was telling me, the Japanese were telling me, oh, in our country they say we don't interfere once we give you the job. Yes, even some of the government things here. So this is an effect of Pakistan. It's not. It's not. It's not unique to it. I think most countries this tends to happen. Bhutto had his own visions of what Karachi should be or what should be. So I think you've done a job that's. Has probably taught you a lot of things. And certainly, if nothing, bravery. I jokingly asking Talat that after Tariq finishes, we'll ask you the real story. So if Talat would like to say something on that, but congratulations on whatever had been done. It's 75% is a big success in this country. Thank you.
So I would just like to add my 2 bits to this thing. I'm part of Tariq Hassan's current team at the office, and this project was one of the inspirations for me to join the office, actually, 6-7 years ago, I think. And I would just like to say that I think architecture as a social it's always going to be connected to society, our values that we have, and the built environment or the building that came up over here is a fair reflection. The end result that we got is a fair reflection of what happens in the process of any process in this country, actually, whether it's banking or law or courts or business, for example. Lots of private clients tend to do the same thing sometimes. We all have had difficult clients as well. Of course, it's a lot easier when it's not coming from like a law perspective or like from courts, etc. But as part of the team, I would nudge you and say that we should still keep on taking these projects, because as part of the new generation, I think we are the ones who have to take it up and make a sort of a change and at least try to get somewhere with our vision instead of just letting it go and letting it slip. So as a firm, we should definitely be brave, and we stand by you on this.
Yes, I think there needs to be a few years course, because I think even a few years would not be enough. But let me, I know Arif, you read that, but I want to just share one other thing. You know, what is important for us to learn was that how to translate ideas that are very conceptual into physical reality. I think that's something that is not very evident in most buildings we come across, and that's something that we did learn.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, in architecture recently, I just want to ask you if you have any piece of advice for young architects or fresh graduates. Thank you.
Work hard.
I've
known you for 25 years now, this year, right? So I know you well enough to know that I've always admired this insatiable hunger you have for projects. I mean, you're insatiably hungry for work. I mean, it's my experience. So I suspect that a project like this comes along, you'll go for it. I'm quite sure of it. Acha, Magar, about this project, I think that I know you presented this with a certain degree of disappointment that it didn't turn out the way you had conceived it. But I think in essence, you would agree that in essence, you've preserved the design in terms of the courtyard, the organization of spaces, the mirroring of spaces, the public and private spaces. And I think that makes it a unique and probably a superior building to many of the other buildings that I've seen on Constitution Avenue, and I would congratulate you on that.
Thank you very much. Yes, Arif, I've known you for a long time, and thanks for the water. And I think I will agree with you very wholeheartedly.
Well, anybody working with government always compromises, but they will not admit. Okay, so hands off for you, and I'd rather have you do it than somebody else would have done it.
Thank you, Vin. So I think we can have tea.
So Hamid Mirza Vikai, I think is absolutely true. What when the government comes to a private practice, I think what really happens at the end of the entire exercise, that you have raised the benchmark. ये जो उन्होंने बनाई है, इनके पर अगर ये गवर्नमेंट वाले ये PW खुद बनाते, I'm saying constantly when we are doing things for the government or not the government, we are always raising the bar. Where one can say कि यार बहुत अच्छा बन गया ये. Now, as far as your fee is concerned, I am almost thinking that whatever is due to you is not all profit that you would have made. So which means you've taken on the job and you've given them money. So that's really what happens.
So the other thing I want to actually tell you is that the building is actually still not complete. So this is still a work in progress. So that's something that maybe I should have mentioned earlier. So we are hoping to get back some of the things that we've lost in the process. But most importantly, and I think all of the senior architects know, that when you have a contractor who is able to get to the power corridors much easier than you can, it's very, very difficult. So this is what large contractors in this country are able to do when they do government work. Had we had any other contractor or any other maybe Karachi based contractor who is working with private companies or private firms, private architects, I think we would have been able to do it much faster and maybe have the finishes that we really wanted. HRL, Habib Rafiq. So this is one of the few buildings that Habib Rafiq has actually completed for the government. The 3 other buildings that they're doing for the government are still incomplete, and they were started maybe 5-10 years earlier than this. So yes, this is 3 years late, but it's still almost complete.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Tariq sir. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation, and look at the number of people that we have, for you, and especially the senior people showed up. Let's finish this session over here right now, and let's meet outside for some tea. Thank you very much.